Welcome, my friend. Tonight, I have a story for you. A tale as old as time, told in a way to ease your mind and guide you gently toward rest. This is a bedtime sleep story, where the battles of ancient gods unfold not to stir your worry, but to carry you deeper into calm. Before we begin, take a moment for yourself. Close your door, dim the lights, and let the world outside grow quiet. Settle into your bed, breathe slowly, and allow your body to sink into comfort. As you listen, let the words wash over you like a soft tide. There's no need to follow every detail, no need to hold on tightly. Just drift along. And if your eyes grow heavy, let them close, because this story will keep on without you. If you find peace here, I invite you to return for more nights like this. You can support this channel simply by listening, by liking, and by subscribing, so that whenever you need rest, a story will be waiting. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. The sound came first. Not thunder, not wind, but something deeper, raw. It was the cry of a god being ripped from his throne. High above the earth, the sky itself trembled, as Cronus, the first ruler of heaven, screamed in agony. His blood fell like burning stars, staining the earth below with a power that would never fade. That night, rivers swelled with crimson, mountains cracked, and the air was thick with the scent of iron. From that wound, new forces would rise, some beautiful, others terrible. It was no ordinary battle. This was not a war between nations, nor a fight for land or gold. This was betrayal at the heart of creation itself. A son had raised his hand against his father. A son, born of earth and sky, wielded a jagged sickle of unbreakable stone and struck without mercy. The moment the blade fell, the world knew it would never again be the same. But why? Why would a son take such a step knowing the weight of the curse that would follow him? Why would the heavens themselves darken to see their own king brought low? To answer that, we must go back, not to the cries of Cronus, not to the blood soaking into the roots of Gaia, but to the silence before the world even had a shape. Before betrayal, before vengeance, there was only emptiness. At the beginning of time, there was nothing but a yawning vastness, a dark silence that stretched in every direction. No sky, no ocean, no earth, just chaos. From that silence stirred the first powers, each one born fully formed, as if pulled from a dream. Gaia, the eternal earth, spread her body wide and fertile. Tartarus, the endless pit, opened beneath. Night spread her velvet wings, and desire itself, invisible but irresistible, whispered the first call for creation. From these came all else, the mountains, the rivers, the skies. Yet even in this new world, something was missing. Gaia longed for a companion, someone to cover her broad fields and father her children. She birthed Cronus, the sky, vast and star-crowned. When he stretched over her, the world felt whole for the first time. From their union came powerful offspring, the mighty Titans, beings as vast as storms, as unyielding as stone. But not all their children were fair to look upon. From the deep places of Gaia's body came monstrous ones, the one-eyed Cyclopes, whose blazing gaze frightened even their siblings, and the 100-handed giants, each with 50 heads, each so vast they could crush mountains with their fists. Uranus, disgusted and fearful, banished them into the abyss of Tartarus, locking them far beneath the earth. Gaia groaned with pain. She loved all her children, even the monstrous ones, and she hated Uranus for casting them into the dark. With every night he pressed down on her, smothering her with his vast weight. She grew more resentful. Her body ached with the burden, her spirit sharpened by rage. In secret, Gaia gathered her Titan children. She whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow and fury. "Your father has wronged me. He has wronged you as well. Who among you will stand with me and strike him down?" For a moment, silence. The Titans, though powerful, feared their father's wrath. One by one, they turned away, unwilling to bear the burden of rebellion. But then, from the shadows, one rose. His name was Cronus, the youngest, yet the most cunning. He stepped forward, his eyes glinting like cold metal. "I will do it," he said. Gaia, filled with grim pride, fashioned a blade from adamant, harder than any stone or metal. She placed it in her son's hand, and Cronus held it tight, his heart steady, his purpose clear. That night, when Uranus descended to lie upon Gaia, Cronus hid among the shadows. He waited until the sky itself lowered over the earth, until his father's breath filled the air. Then, with one swift and merciless strike, he swung the sickle. The scream of Uranus split the heavens, shaking the newborn world to its roots. Stars shuddered, the sea boiled. From the blood that fell upon the earth, strange new beings rose. Furies with whips of fire, giants with weapons of stone, and from the sea foam itself, something even more beautiful began to stir. Cronus stood above it all, breathing hard, the sickle slick with divine blood. The sky had fallen, and he, for the first time, tasted power. But in the silence that followed, Uranus's voice still echoed, ragged and vengeful. "You will fall as I have fallen. Your children will rise against you."
Cronus froze. The curse sank into his heart, chilling him deeper than any blade. He had won the throne, but at what cost? And so, the world's new ruler stood trembling, the cries of his father still ringing in his ears. He held the sickle, he held the power, but in his shadow already stirred the fate that would one day betray him. The reign of Cronus had begun, but the curse of Uranus was already waiting. Cronus stood among his siblings, the sickle still gleaming with his father's blood. The heavens above had grown strangely quiet. No longer did Uranus press upon Gaia with his crushing weight. For the first time, the earth could breathe, stretching her valleys and rivers wide beneath the stars. The Titans gathered, watching their brother. Some trembled, others whispered. They had seen what he had done, the unthinkable. And now, with Uranus gone, they knew a new order was dawning. Gaia's voice rose from the soil, heavy with both triumph and sorrow. "My son, you have freed me. You have freed the world. Now rule wisely, lest you suffer the same fate." Cronus raised the sickle, his eyes burning with new fire. "I will not fail. The age of the Titans begins tonight." And so, without coronation or ceremony, Cronus became king. His throne was carved not of stone, but of silence, the silence left behind by Uranus's fall. At first, the new age seemed peaceful. The Titans spread across the earth and sky, filling the world with rivers, mountains, and light. Oceanus, lord of the seas, stretched his waters across the edges of the earth. Hyperion lifted the first dawn into the sky, casting golden light over valleys that had never known morning. Mnemosyne, memory herself, shaped the first stories in mortal minds. The world was alive with creation, and for a time it seemed Cronus had delivered paradise. Yet beneath the peace, something darker stirred. Cronus remembered his father's curse. Again and again, he heard Uranus's ragged words in his sleep. "You will fall, as I have fallen. Your children will rise against you." The words clung to him like shadows. He began to see treachery in every glance, every whisper of wind. The earth that once welcomed him now seemed to echo with warning. His siblings, once allies, now appeared as rivals waiting to seize his crown. And then came Rhea. Rhea, his sister and queen, was as radiant as dawn, her presence softening Cronus's hardened rule. She brought him comfort, steadiness, and in time, children. One by one, their divine infants were born, bright-eyed, radiant, each more powerful than the last. But each birth only deepened Cronus's fear. Was this the beginning of his downfall? Were these children the shadows of the curse his father had spoken? Every wail, every laugh, every tiny hand reaching toward the heavens gnawed at his mind. He could not shake the thought, one day one of these little ones will take everything from me. And so, with a heart hardened by dread, Cronus made his choice. When Rhea placed the first child in his arms, a beautiful daughter, Hestia, destined to bring warmth to hearth and home, Cronus smiled, but only for a moment. Then, before Rhea's horrified eyes, he opened his mouth and swallowed the child whole. The world shuddered. Rhea's cry echoed through the halls of the Titans, but Cronus only wiped his mouth and said, "The curse will not take me. I will devour it before it is born." One by one, as Rhea bore her children, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Cronus swallowed them too. No blood was spilled, no blade drawn, but it was a violence deeper than any battlefield. He devoured them not in anger, but in cold, deliberate terror. Rhea's heart broke with every loss. She walked through her halls with empty arms, her womb a cradle of grief. Still she said nothing, for Cronus was king, and his fear was sharper than any sickle. The Titans looked on in silence, powerless to challenge their brother. The heavens grew heavy again, not with Uranus's weight, but with Cronus's cruelty. The golden age of the Titans was no age of gold. It was an age of silence, of stolen children, and fear disguised as order. And yet, deep within Rhea's sorrow, a fire began to burn. On the day she carried her sixth child, her steps faltered. She could not, would not lose another. The pain of her hollow arms had grown too heavy, the emptiness too sharp. She knew what Cronus would do. She knew what he was waiting for. But this time would be different. This child, she swore, would not be swallowed. This child would survive. This child would grow strong enough to challenge the devouring silence that had stolen her family.
She whispered her vow into the night, her eyes filled with fury and resolve. And far below, Gaia listened once more, as she always had, when mothers cried out against cruel husbands and cursed kings. The sixth child was stirring within her. Cronus was waiting with open jaws, but Rhea was ready to betray her king.
Rhea's footsteps echoed through the silent halls of the Titans. Her womb was heavy with life, but her heart heavier still with dread. 5 children she had carried. 5 children Cronus had swallowed whole. Each time she had begged, each time she had wept, and each time she had watched the same horror unfold. But this time, she would not surrender. One night, as the moon stretched her pale light across the land, Rhea slipped away from Cronus's watchful gaze. She wandered into the deep forests, where the ancient earth pulsed with a heartbeat older than gods. She knelt upon the soil and pressed her hands into the dirt. "Mother Gaia," Rhea whispered, her voice breaking, "hear me. My children are gone, devoured by their own father. He fears the curse of Uranus, and I fear the silence of my empty arms. Please, save this one. Let him live." The ground trembled softly, and from the darkness Gaia rose, ancient, vast, her form both woman and mountain. Her eyes glowed with sorrow and fire. "My daughter," Gaia said, her voice like rolling stone, "I heard your cries long ago, but now the time has come. The curse upon Cronus cannot be undone, but it can be bided. One child shall rise, and through him justice will awaken." Rhea's tears glistened in the moonlight. "Tell me what to do." Guided by Gaia, Rhea journeyed to the island of Crete. There, in a hidden cave shrouded by cedar and olive trees, she brought her 6th child into the world. The air filled with the newborn's cries, strong and defiant, echoing off the stone walls as though even the cave itself recognized his destiny. She looked down at the child, her son, his eyes alight with untamed fire. "Zeus," she whispered, "you will not be devoured. You will not be lost." But even as joy filled her heart, fear clawed at her chest. Cronus would come soon, demanding the infant. So Gaia gave Rhea her weapon, a stone, rough and heavy, wrapped tightly in swaddling cloth. "Place this in his hands," Gaia said, "and Cronus, blinded by fear, will not know the difference." Rhea held the stone close, her heart pounding. She kissed her newborn's brow one last time before passing him to Gaia's care. The earth goddess summoned guardians, nymphs of the forest, and the curates, armored dancers whose shields clashed in thunderous rhythm. Their task was clear: to hide the cries of the infant god, drowning them in the ringing of bronze so Cronus would never hear. And so Zeus was hidden, safe in the cradle of the earth. Rhea returned to Cronus's hall, pale but composed. In her arms, wrapped in soft linen, she carried the stone. "My lord," she said softly, her voice trembling only slightly, "our child is born." Cronus did not hesitate. He reached for the bundle with hungry hands, tore it from her arms, and swallowed it whole. Rhea turned away, her heart breaking and soaring at once. Cronus believed his throne secure, but in truth, he had devoured nothing but cold stone. Far away, in a hidden cave, a child destined to shake the heavens took his first peaceful breath. In the depths of Crete, beneath a canopy of cedar and stone, the infant Zeus grew far from the gaze of Cronus. His cradle was no golden throne, but a bed of woven reeds, cushioned with the moss of the forest. Above him, the curates, warriors clad in bronze, kept their eternal vigil. Whenever Zeus's cries rose up, they clashed their shields together, creating a storm of sound that echoed across the cave walls. To Cronus, far away, it was nothing more than thunder rolling in the distance. The nymphs who raised him whispered lullabies older than the Titans. Amalthea, the goat who nourished him with her milk, stood beside his cradle like a guardian spirit. From her horns flowed rivers of sweetness, and from her strength Zeus drew his own. But he was no ordinary child. Even in infancy, strange signs followed him. When he laughed, sparks of light flickered across the stone ceiling like tiny stars. When he cried, winds stirred at the cave's mouth, bending the trees outside. The nymphs looked upon him with awe and whispered, "He is meant for more than hiding. The sky itself stirs within him." As the years passed, Zeus grew bold and restless. He ran barefoot across the forests, his laughter carrying like distant thunder. He chased wild animals, climbed jagged cliffs, and stared for hours at the sky above him, as though it called to him in a language only he could understand. One day, while exploring a high ridge, he asked his nursemaid Adrastea, "Why do the warriors strike their shields whenever I cry? Why do we live hidden in the shadows? Who am I hiding from?"
Her face paled, but she forced a smile. "You are precious, little one. The world is not ready for you yet. When the time comes, you will know." But Zeus was not satisfied. Deep within, he felt a tension, like a storm gathering inside his chest. He could not explain it, but he knew the truth was being kept from him. It was Amalthea, his faithful guardian, who gave him his first gift of power. One night, as stars wheeled overhead, her great horn snapped upon the rocks. Rather than mourn, Zeus touched the horn and found it overflowing with abundance. Fruit, bread, honey, all spilling from its hollow mouth. The nymphs called it the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. Zeus clutched it with wonder, realizing the earth itself seemed to answer his touch. And for the first time, he felt not just like a child of the cave, but like something greater. Still, shadows lingered. He had dreams he could not explain. Dreams of a throne bathed in firelight, of a man with devouring eyes, of siblings crying out from the darkness of their father's stomach. He woke trembling, heart pounding, his small fists clenched as if grasping lightning itself. Zeus was no longer a helpless babe. His strength grew daily, and with it, the weight of destiny. But beyond the cave walls, Cronus reigned with an iron grip. Unaware that the child who would end his rule was no longer swaddled in silence, he was rising, restless, and waiting. And soon, fate would call him from hiding. The boy who once played among cedar trees now stood tall, his shoulders broad, his eyes sharp like lightning before a storm. Zeus was no longer a child, yet the cave still held him like a secret, as if the world feared what might happen if he stepped into the light. But questions pressed harder against him with each season. Why did he remain hidden? Why did his guardians tremble when he spoke of leaving the island? And most of all, why did his dreams return night after night, filled with cries of voices trapped in darkness? One evening, when the moon hung low and pale, Zeus approached Adrastea as she tended a small fire. His tone was not of a child demanding answers, but of a man seeking truth. "Tell me," he said, "what shadows haunt my sleep? Who are the voices I hear? And why do I feel as though the sky itself waits for me to claim it?" Adrastea froze. The fire popped,
sending sparks into the dark, but she said nothing. Her silence told Zeus enough. "You know," he pressed. His voice was low and thunderous. "No more lies." It was not Adrastea who answered, but Gaia herself. The cave walls trembled, the ground split with a sigh, and the ancient mother rose once more. Her gaze was heavy with sorrow, yet steady with purpose. "Zeus, the time for silence has ended. You are not hidden by chance, but by necessity. For your father Cronus devours his children whole. He swallowed your brothers and sisters, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, fearing they would rise against him as he once rose against Uranus. You alone were spared, hidden by your mother's cunning and my hand." Zeus felt the words strike him like a spear to the chest. His siblings, swallowed, imprisoned, condemned to darkness before they even drew breath. His fists tightened, his jaw clenched, and in his chest thunder rumbled. "My father is a coward," Zeus growled. "He rules by fear, not strength. He devours what he cannot defeat." Gaia's eyes gleamed like deep stone. "And yet, the curse of Uranus lives on. Cronus cannot escape it. One child will rise to end his reign. That child is you." Zeus turned away, pacing like a storm contained. Rage burned in him, not only at Cronus, but at the cruelty of fate itself. Yet with that rage came clarity. He knew what he must do. "I will not let my brothers and sisters remain in his belly. I will free them. I will bring him down, as he once brought down Uranus. And I will not rule by fear, but by justice." The nymphs watched in silence, trembling, for in that moment, the hidden boy of Crete became something more. The Stormbringer, the Thunderer, the one who would shake the heavens. But Gaia's words lingered in the air like a warning. To strike down Cronus, you will need more than courage. You will need allies and cunning and the fire of the earth itself. Seek them well, for your father's hunger knows no end. Zeus lifted his gaze to the night sky, where the stars burned cold and bright. For the first time, he did not see them as distant lights, but as witnesses. Witnesses to the storm he would unleash. The time for hiding was over. Zeus stood at the mouth of the cave where he had been raised, the wind tugging at his hair, the sea stretching endless before him. For years he had only known the shadows of Crete, the nymphs' lullabies, and Gaia's warnings. Now, as dawn painted the sky in streaks of fire, he took his first step into the wider world. The Curetes watched him go, their bronze shields still clashing in ritual, but even their thunder could no longer match the storm in his chest. He was no longer the boy they had guarded. He was a man, and his father's curse burned in his veins. Like destiny.
Zeus did not wander blindly. Gaia whispered to him in dreams, guiding his steps. She told him of the ancient smiths, the Cyclopses, buried deep within Tartarus, bound by chains of fear after Cronus seized power. They were the masters of fire and forge, the first to craft weapons fit for gods. "If you would challenge the king who devours," Gaia's voice murmured in his sleep, "seek the fire bearers. They will gift you the weapon of the storm."
Zeus awoke with resolve. The Cyclopses would be his first allies. The path was perilous. He crossed mountains that split the clouds, walked valleys where shadows stretched longer than the day, and braved seas whose waves clawed like beasts. Yet everywhere he went, strange signs followed him. The winds bent to his stride, storms rose in his wake, and mortals whispered of a wanderer who carried the sky in his eyes. It was during these wanderings that he first encountered Metis, the goddess of wisdom. She appeared to him not in splendor, but in simple form, her cloak dark, her voice steady as flowing water. "You seek to overthrow Cronus," she said, her eyes piercing. "But raw strength will not be enough. Your father devours what he fears. To defeat him, you must be more than a storm. You must be cunning." Zeus regarded her, wary yet curious. "And you would help me?" Metis smiled faintly. "Wisdom is wasted if not tested. I will guide you, but you must listen." Thus wisdom and storm became bound, and Zeus took his first true companion. Together, they journeyed to the edges of the earth, where the entrance to Tartarus yawned like a wound. The air reeked of fire and iron, the cries of imprisoned beings echoing from the abyss. Even Zeus hesitated, his hand trembling as he peered into the black. But Metis laid her hand on his arm. "You must descend. In the depths lies the power you seek. Without it, Cronus cannot be unseated." So Zeus braced himself, the thunder stirring in his chest, and stepped into the darkness. Chains rattled, the air grew hot, and far below, the Cyclopses stirred, their single eyes glowing like coals in the void. The air in Tartarus was thick with fire and ash. Every breath scorched Zeus's lungs. Every step echoed against stone walls that seemed to stretch without end. Chains groaned in the darkness, heavy with despair. Metis walked beside him, her face calm though shadows danced across her features. "Be wary," she whispered. "Your father imprisoned the Cyclopses for good reason. They are creatures of great power, power he feared." As they pressed deeper, Zeus saw them at last. 3 towering figures, each with a single blazing eye that glowed like a furnace. Their arms were bound with chains forged by Cronus himself, their backs bent from centuries of captivity. Yet even in their suffering, their gaze was fierce, unbroken. "Who dares disturb the silence of our prison?" one bellowed. "I am Zeus, son of Rhea, son of Cronus. I have come to end the reign of fear." The Cyclopses studied him, their great eyes narrowing. "Your father swallowed his children whole, fearing the curse of Uranus. Why should we trust the blood of such a tyrant?" Zeus's jaw tightened. "Because I am not my father. I was spared. I was hidden, raised to rise against him. And if you give me your strength, I swear his chains will never bind you again." The Cyclopses rumbled, a sound like shifting mountains. Finally, one spoke. "Prove your words. Break our bonds, and we will forge for you a gift unlike any in heaven or earth." With a nod from Metis, Zeus stepped forward, his hands wrapped around the iron chains that bound them. He pulled, at first with muscle, then with fury, then with the storm gathering in his chest. Lightning cracked across the cavern walls, the air trembled,
The chains groaned, and with a final roar, Zeus tore them apart. Sparks exploded into the darkness, and the Cyclopses rose free for the first time in ages. They stretched their colossal arms, their single eyes blazing brighter than ever. "You are no Cronus," one said. "You are the storm he fears." True to their word, the Cyclopses led Zeus into their hidden forge. Flames roared, molten rivers flowed, and anvils rang with the song of creation. For 3 days and nights they worked, hammering, shaping, infusing raw fire with the essence of the sky. At last, they placed into Zeus's hands a weapon unlike any seen in heaven or earth. A bolt of lightning, alive with crackling power. "With this," they declared, "you command the storm itself. Wield it wisely, for it will strike as fiercely as your will." Zeus held the bolt, its light flickering across his face. He felt its weight, its hunger, its promise. For the first time, the storm within him had taken shape in his hand.
He was no longer merely a hidden son. He was a weapon of destiny. But far above, on his throne, Cronus stirred. Whispers of rebellion reached his ears. He felt the sky shift as though someone was rising against him. The Devourer's grip on the world tightened, and he vowed no child would ever dethrone him. The great halls of Cronus glittered with false splendor. Golden pillars, ivory floors, and feasts that never ended, yet the air was heavy with silence. For no laughter lingered where fear was master. Cronus sat upon his throne of stone, his eyes cold as he surveyed the realm he ruled by hunger and terror. But on this night, a stranger walked those halls. Cloaked in shadow, her steps light as whispers, Metis entered disguised as a servant. In her hands she carried a goblet carved from silver, filled with a drink brewed in secret, a potion made of herbs older than the Titans themselves, herbs that Gaia had whispered to her in confidence. At her side, unseen to the eyes of the court, Zeus watched. His heart thundered as he looked upon his mother, Rhea, seated at Cronus's side, her face pale with sorrow. He had never before stood within these halls, never before gazed upon the father who had devoured his blood. Cronus turned his gaze upon the servant. "What have you brought me?" His voice rolled like distant thunder, heavy with suspicion. "A drink, my lord," Metis said, bowing low. "Brewed for strength and vitality. May it keep your reign everlasting." Cronus smirked, arrogance blinding him. He took the goblet, swirling the dark liquid within. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still. Then, with a single draught, he drank. At first, nothing happened. The court held its breath, the fire in the braziers crackling softly. Then Cronus's eyes widened, his throat clenched, his body convulsed, and a sound like thunder mixed with anguish tore from his chest. The Titans rushed forward, but it was too late. From Cronus's mouth poured the first of his children, grown, radiant, and gasping for air. Hestia stumbled forward, eyes wide with confusion. Then Demeter, her hands trembling. Hera followed, her gaze fierce, even in her shock. Poseidon erupted forth like a wave crashing against stone, his strength undeniable. And last came Hades, grim and silent, his eyes already shadowed with the weight of his fate.
the hall filled with cries, disbelief, and fury. The children of Cronus, stolen and swallowed, stood reborn, divine and immortal. Rhea wept openly, her hands pressed to her lips. My children are returned!" But Cronus standed to his feet, his body shaking with rage. His sickle gleamed in his hand, and his voice was thunder cracked with fury.
Ungrateful spawn, do you think freedom spares you from prophecy? No chain can bind me, no scheme can topple me. I will swallow you again, and this time, not even Gaia will save you." The freed siblings stepped beside Zeus, their forms blazing with newfound power. For the first time, they stood together, 6 against 1. And yet, the earth trembled. A shadow moved across the hall, vast and dreadful. From the depths of Tartarus, Cronus's true allies stirred, the ancient Titans, long silent, now rising to war. The sky split open with the roar of awakening Titans. From the farthest reaches of the mountains, from the molten depths of the earth, from seas older than memory, they came. Cronus had summoned his brethren, the mighty Oceanus, the burning Hyperion, the shining Caius, and countless more. Their footsteps shook the foundations of the world, each stride like an earthquake, each breath like a storm. The young god stood at the threshold of war. Zeus gripped his lightning bolt, its crackle echoing in the silence. Beside him, Poseidon clenched a trident, freshly shaped by the Cyclops, its prongs gleaming like moonlight on restless waves. Hades stood tall, his eyes shadowed with the weight of the underworld. Hera's gaze burned with pride, Demeter's with quiet fury, Hestia's with calm resolve. They were 6, facing countless foes, yet their resolve was iron. "Brothers, sisters," Zeus spoke, his voice carrying like thunder across the battlefield. "Our father devoured us to keep his throne. The Titans would see us shackled again, but no chain forged in fear can hold us now. Today, we fight not for thrones, but for freedom." His words sparked their courage. The Olympians raised their weapons, their voices rising like a storm as the Titans closed in. The clash began with fire. Hyperion, lord of blazing light, hurled a sun flame that scorched the ground. Zeus answered with lightning, a bolt so fierce it split the heavens in two. The crackle of storm meant the roar of flame, and the sky itself seemed to shatter. Poseidon struck next, driving his trident into the ground. From the earth burst a wave so vast it swallowed entire hills, crashing against the Titan ranks. Oceanus rose to meet him, his body a flood of ancient waters, and the sea itself raged with their struggle. Meanwhile, Hades spread his arms, and the shadows deepened. From the chasms of the underworld came whispers of death, chilling even the immortal flesh of the Titans. Caius charged him, his blade gleaming, but every strike met darkness that swallowed its light.
Hera, Demeter, and Hestia moved among their brothers, not with brute force, but with cunning and resolve. Hera's defiance drew the Titan's fury upon herself. Demeter's command of the earth cracked the soil beneath their feet, and Hestia's flame held steady, a guiding beacon for her siblings. Yet, for every surge of Olympian might, the Titans answered with crushing power. Mountains crumbled beneath their blows, rivers boiled, stars trembled in the sky. Zeus, panting, raised his bolt once more, but before he could strike, the ground split open. From the abyss emerged figures more monstrous than even the Titans. The Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed ones, their arms shackled in chains of fire, forced to fight by Cronus's command. Their 50 heads bellowed as one, their 100 arms hurled boulders the size of castles. The Olympians barely had time to scatter. The battlefield erupted into chaos, and for the first time, doubt crept into the hearts of the young gods. Cronus raised his sickle high, his laughter echoing across the carnage. "Did you think victory would come so easily?" he thundered. "This is only the beginning." The storm of war had been unleashed, and the world would never be the same. The battlefield shook under the assault of the 100-handed giants. Their chained arms swung mountains as weapons, their voices a thunder of rage. Each strike sent shockwaves that split valleys and toppled forests. The Titans roared in triumph, believing their monstrous allies had sealed victory. Zeus stumbled, his body aching from the shock of a hurled boulder that shattered a ridge beside him. The Olympians regrouped, forming a fragile circle amidst the chaos. Poseidon's trident trembled in his grip, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the sea god's fury. Hades crouched low, shadows curling around his hands like serpents ready to strike. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia stood behind them, unwavering despite the storm of destruction. "Brothers," Zeus growled, lightning sparking across his body. "If we meet this force with only strength, we will fall. The chains bind their will, but chains can be broken." Hades' dark gaze flickered with grim understanding. "You mean to free them? These creatures once fought against the sky itself. Why would they turn on their own?" "Because," Zeus replied, voice low, "they hate their chains more than they love their masters." With a nod, he leapt skyward, bolts of fire crackling in his wake. The giants turned their many eyes toward him, roaring, hurling boulders to swat him from the sky. Zeus dodged through the barrage, each stone a mountain hurled with hate, until he landed on the shoulder of Briareus, one of the mighty three. The giant thrashed, shaking like a storming sea. Zeus pressed his hand to the burning iron shackles binding Briareus's arms. "I know your rage," Zeus bellowed, his voice carrying above the din of war. "But your fury is wasted while you serve as Cronus's chained beast. Break free, and your strength is yours again. Stand with us, not as slaves, but as kings of battle." Lightning surged from his hands, searing into the fetters. The iron cracked, and the first chain split apart with a scream of metal. Briareus staggered, his 100 fists trembling with new freedom. His 50 heads turned, each face filled with shock, confusion, and rising fury, no longer aimed at the Olympians, but at the Titans who had enslaved him. The battlefield paused for a heartbeat as every eye turned toward the freed giant. Cronus's laughter faltered. "Obey me, Briareus," he thundered. But Briareus lifted a freed arm and hurled a mountain straight into the ranks of the Titans. The crash silenced the battlefield. Encouraged, Zeus dove toward the next giant, Cronus. Poseidon surged forward with him, driving his trident into the chains that bound the monster's legs. With a roar, Cronus snapped the shackles, his fury unleashed. Cronus's face twisted with rage. "Traitors!" he howled. He swung his sickle at Zeus, a slash so wide it tore the sky in two. Zeus barely dodged, the blade carving a canyon where he had stood. But before he could strike again, a new sound split the air, the triumphant roar of freed giants. Briareus and Cronus raised their 100 arms, turning their fury against the Titans. The tide of battle had shifted, if only for a moment. But Cronus was not defeated. From the shadow of his cloak he summoned a darkness older than night itself, one that even the free giants quailed before. The war was far from won. The battlefield trembled with the roar of newly freed giants. Briareus and Cottus swung boulders like pebbles, crushing Titan ranks beneath their avalanche of fists. The Olympians fought with renewed fire, lightning splitting the sky, waves consuming armies, shadows devouring the ground. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. The Titans faltered, their lines broken, their confidence shaken. Even Oceanus withdrew into his waters, watching the tide turn. But Cronus was not finished. The king of the Titans stood in the heart of the chaos, his cloak billowing like a storm cloud. His sickle glowed with the memory of blood once spilled, his father's blood, when he had overthrown Uranus. Now his voice carried across the battlefield like an earthquake.
You think your chains give you freedom? Cronus roared, eyes blazing. You think your rebellion grants you power? You are children playing with thunder. You are fools defying eternity. He raised his sickle high, and the sky went black. From the shadow of his cloak poured a darkness older than the Titans themselves. It was not night, nor storm, nor void. It was fear given form. The darkness spread like smoke across the battlefield, swallowing flame, lightning, and sea spray. Even Zeus's bolts dimmed within it. The Olympians staggered, their courage faltering as visions clawed at their minds. Hera saw herself shackled to a loveless throne, her voice stolen. Demeter saw barren fields, her children starved, her womb cursed. Poseidon drowned in endless depths, his trident slipping from his hand. Hades sank into a silence so complete it threatened to erase his very name. The darkness was memory and prophecy at once. It whispered failure, it showed ruin, it pressed despair into every heart. Even the freed giants faltered. Briareus dropped a boulder mid-swing, his many eyes widening as the shadows pried into his mind. Cottus roared, but his roar turned hollow, empty, as though it echoed only within his chains again. Cronus stepped forward, his sickle blazing with the dark fire of his creation. "Do you feel it, children?" he sneered. "This is not shadow, this is inevitability. The reign of Titans cannot be undone. You may fight, you may scream, but in the end you will kneel as all beings must kneel." For the first time, Zeus faltered. The lightning in his hands sputtered, sparks dying before they could take form. He saw himself crushed beneath his father's blade, forgotten, his rebellion erased. For a breath, he believed it. But then, through the suffocating dark, a single flame held steady. It was small, but unwavering. Hestia's hearth fire burning quietly at her side. She stepped forward, her face calm, though shadows clawed at her heart. "This is not inevitability," she whispered, her flame pushing back the dark. "This is fear, and fear has no throne." The small flame grew, casting a glow across the battlefield. The Olympians looked to her, their courage flickering back to life. Zeus clenched his fist, lightning reigniting. Poseidon's trident gleamed again. Hades' shadows coiled tighter, no longer consuming him, but waiting for his command. Cronus hissed, his darkness buckling against the defiant flame. But he raised his sickle once more, determined to end this rebellion in blood. The sickle fell, aimed straight at Hestia.
The sickle descended, blazing with the fury of Cronus, its arc wide enough to cleave a mountain in two. The battlefield froze as it cut through the blackness, rushing straight toward the quiet flame of Hestia. But before it struck, Zeus hurled himself into the path. His lightning met the blade with a shriek of power, sparks erupting in a storm. The force flung him backward, but his defiance had slowed the deadly swing. Poseidon surged in next, his trident crashing against the weapon, water exploding like a tidal wave to smother its fire. Still, Cronus pressed down, his strength overwhelming. The sickle pushed closer, inch by inch, toward Hestia's heart. Then Hades appeared in silence, shadows wrapping around the sickle's edge. He poured his will into the darkness, not to strengthen Cronus's weapon, but to bind it still. For a heartbeat, the sickle trembled, trapped between underworld shade, sea-born force, and storm-born fire. "Now!" Zeus roared. The sisters moved as one. Hera's hand burned with divine fury as she struck Cronus's arm, knocking him off balance. Demeter called upon the roots of the earth, vines lashing upward to coil around the Titan's legs. And at the center, Hestia's flame surged brighter, no longer a quiet ember, but a roaring hearth, pushing back the consuming dark. Cronus staggered, his cloak of shadow unraveling under the blaze. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with a flicker of recognition. The same weapon he had once used to overthrow his father was slipping from his grasp. With a scream of rage, he tightened his hold on the sickle. But Zeus, seizing the moment, called thunder like never before. He struck the sickle itself, lightning coursing down the blade. Poseidon drove his trident into its handle, and Hades poured shadows into the cracks of its ancient metal. The weapon that had once toppled Uranus shuddered, caught between powers of sky, sea, and death. And then it broke. The sickle split with a sound like worlds colliding, shards of immortal iron flying across the battlefield. The ground quaked as the weapon's curse shattered. The freed giants roared with triumph, their chains of shadow crumbling with it. Briareus swung all 100 arms in fury, scattering titans like leaves in a storm.
Cronus fell back, clutching the broken hilt. His voice shook the earth, not with command, but with disbelief. "Impossible," he growled. "This cannot be undone. The sickle was eternity. It was my throne." Zeus rose, his body bruised and scorched, but unbroken. His siblings gathered at his side, their faces lit by the steady glow of Hestia's fire. "No throne lasts forever," Zeus thundered. "Not yours, not your father's, not even mine." The sky rumbled with his words. For the first time, Cronus looked upon his children not as prey, but as rivals, gods who could stand against him. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Titans, once certain of victory, faltered as the Olympians surged forward, their power united. Yet Cronus was far from defeated. Even weaponless, he was still the king of time, and his fury was only beginning to unfold. The battlefield was a ruin of shattered mountains and seas torn from their beds. Smoke rose like a second sky, and the cries of gods and giants echoed through the broken world. At its heart stood Cronus, weaponless but unbowed, his fury a storm that no mortal tongue could name. Even stripped of his sickle, he commanded the strength of ages. With a sweep of his arm, he bent time itself, slowing the charge of his children, freezing boulders mid-flight, turning lightning into crawling sparks.
every heartbeat stretched into an eternity, every breath felt stolen. "Did you think shattering a blade could shatter me?" Cronus thundered. "I am not iron, I am time, and time devours all." The Olympians staggered beneath the weight of his power. Hera gasped, trapped in a moment that stretched into forever. Poseidon fought to move his trident through the thickened air. Hades' shadows struggled to slip through the folds of time. Only Zeus forced his way forward, lightning writhing wildly around him. Each step was agony, as though his body were walking through centuries. Yet he pressed on, eyes locked on his father. "You devour all, do you?" Zeus shouted, each word dragged out like thunder slowed to a crawl. "Then let us see if you can devour freedom." Briareus roared behind him, breaking through the time snare with sheer force. The 100-handed giant hurled mountains, forcing Cronus to split his attention. In that breath of distraction, Poseidon struck, his trident stabbing deep into the earth. The sea burst upward, a torrent of unstoppable force that crashed against Cronus's legs. Hades followed, whispering words older than the Titans themselves. The shadows of the underworld coiled around Cronus's form, dragging at his strength, pulling him towards the abyss. Cronus fought, his rage tearing through the bonds, his roar shaking heaven and earth. But then Hera's voice rang out, filled with defiance. "Your reign ends, Father! You will not bind us as you bound the world!" Demeter lifted her arms, summoning vines and roots that shot up to seize the Titan king, each tendril glowing with the life he had sought to smother. Hestia's flame burned brighter still, casting warmth that banished the last of his shadows of despair. Together they bound him. Zeus raised his lightning one final time, his siblings at his side, the freed giants roaring behind them. "This is the will of Olympus," he cried. He hurled the bolt with all the fury of storm and sky. It struck Cronus in the chest, exploding in a light that tore through shadow and flame. Cronus screamed, not in defeat alone, but in disbelief, as he fell beneath the combined strength of his children. The earth opened, vast and terrible, and the defeated Titans were cast into Tartarus, chained in the abyss by the 100-handed giants they had once enslaved. The gates slammed shut, sealed for all eternity. The war was over. The sky cleared, revealing the dawn of a new age. The 6 Olympians stood together on the smoking battlefield, battered but unbroken. Zeus raised his eyes to the heavens. "The reign of the Titans has ended," he declared. "Now begins the age of the Olympians." The thunder rolled in agreement. The sea calmed, the earth stilled, and the hearth fire glowed gently, a promise that even in the darkest nights light would remain. And so, from ruin and war, the throne of Olympus was born.
And so, dear listener, the battle of gods came to its close. From the shadows of chaos, from the rage of titans, and from the clash of storm and fire, a new order rose. The Olympians, once swallowed children, now stood as rulers of heaven, sea, and underworld. Their tale was not only of war, but of endurance, of unity, of a flame that would not be snuffed out. But the noise of battle fades now. The thunder grows quiet. The sea softens to a lull. The earth settles into stillness. High upon the new throne of Olympus, the gods take their place, watching over a world that begins to breathe again. And you, too, may rest. Close your eyes and let the fire of Hestia warm you, a flame that never falters. Feel the calm tide of Poseidon rocking you gently, like waves lapping a quiet shore. Hear the soft roll of Zeus's thunder, no longer fierce, but distant and steady, like a heartbeat in the sky. The struggles of the gods belong to another time, another world. Here, in this quiet moment, there are no battles to fight, no storms to endure, only peace. So sink deeper into the stillness. Let go of every weight, every thought, every shadow that clings. The Titans have fallen, the war is done, and dawn has risen. Sleep now beneath Olympus. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Sweet dreams, dear friend.